Hi, and welcome to Rave Leader Chat, week number 9 for the Sermon on the Mount, focusing on Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 through 34. Just a quick word of transition as we kind of move through the end of Matthew chapter 6. We recall that in chapter 5, we sort of talked about this new righteousness, a deeper righteousness in the scribes and the Pharisees. And we had sort of set up that the first half of Matthew chapter 6 was about the how to do that righteousness. And now we sort of segue into a new one. There's a couple good questions in the study guide. The opening question for the group about what did you want to do kind of speaks to how our ambitions or aim have changed over life. And then really that opening line sort of focuses it on our ambitions. So this really is sort of the transition. So we talked about how to do righteousness, and now we sort of talk about what is the aim, what's the goal, what are we really focused on? And so that's really a good way to think about it. And then structurally, there's sort of 4 different areas that get compared, and in most of them, there's this direct comparison. There's 2 treasures to focus on. There's 2 different types of eyes to look at. There's 2 different kinds of masters. And you could really argue that there's sort of 2 different aims or focus or concerns in the last one. So let's go ahead and walk through this passage together. The first one, treasures in verses 19 through 21. Question 2 is a great one to sort of have you think about that comparison. It drives that comparison home. What's beneficial about one type of treasure and what's detrimental about the other type of treasure? Now, in the larger context of the Gospel of Matthew, we tend to read this and say treasure is money, but it really can be possessions, and really maybe at a deeper level, what do those things really serve as? They really serve how we're noticed. As we sort of talked about that in the, are we praying to be noticed, or are we praying for God to notice us? Are we fasting to be noticed by people, or are we fasting to be noticed by God? That's really sort of the context here. Do we want these things so that other people notice us and go, man, you've arrived, you've accomplished so much, you're successful? Or are we storing up the kind of treasure that God notices and sort of has a different quality about it? And then in that comparison, we're offered 3 things, 3 challenges to sort of the ambition of material possession or things that the world notices, including fame or success. And it's sort of the 3 corruptions, if you will. Nature's corruptions of the things that want to eat it away. Sort of the corruption of time. Things sort of rust and spoil over time. One moment you can be a successful movie star, and the next moment people are going, whatever happened to so-and-so? And third, sort of humanity's brokenness, corruption, or corrosion of it. That people can take it. And so there's this crazy sort of thought to it that these treasures have to be protected because they're so temporary and fleeting in nature. They don't sustain. And then again, as we mentioned last week in the Lord's Prayer, we're taught to do something else instead. You get that word. Instead, you're redirected. And our initial thought is we're redirected. Where are we redirected, or what are we directed to focus on? And really the bigger comparison is who are we being redirected to? And then that passage sort of ends with verse 21 that just reminds us of this truth, and that where our treasure is, our heart is also. When you ask somebody what their goal is, their aim is, what's the most important thing, we might be able to give a nice biblical answer beforehand, but when we really speak with passion, our true passion comes out. I really like, and that's starting to contend with them as their God. The second area is the eyes. And this one, I think the best way to read this is that the goals determine the life. If your eyes are healthy and well and focused on light, things turn out well. And if they're focused on darkness, wow, how dark that darkness is. Again, the eyes sort of really focusing on that aim, ambition, and the goal that you're working on. The third one we're really familiar with, and that's this: you cannot serve 2 masters. And so you've got this, just again, one verse. No one can serve 2 masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money or mammon. Well, a couple things here. One is, it's put out there just very quickly and very clearly, you can't do both. Question 5 in your study guide is a good question about that. Why is it possible to work for two different bosses? And why does Jesus affirm you cannot do this? Notice it's stated twice, at the very beginning, at the very end. You cannot and you cannot. It is impossible, is what Jesus is saying. You can't moonlight. You can't serve God by day and moonlight for gain by night. And you've experienced some of this before. When you really are torn between two goals, you do despise one. When your heart really is going after one and the other is a competing goal, you get disgruntled and you get kind of irritated that, wait a second, this thing's preventing me from doing this better. So great comparison there. Mammon, maybe your translation says money. Really the word is about possession or property, but it includes money and gain and success. And so we really have seen that those things can sort of occupy us and distract us and keep us from being godly focused. When we really are focused on what the world deems as important, we tend to set the things that the kingdom of God says is important aside. Want to read just a quick quote that sort of talks about why it's maybe good to use the word mammon from Dale Bruner. With the word mammon, there is a spiritual force who works with tremendous attracting power to draw us into its orbit and out from under the service of Christ. There's almost something good about using this name for it, this word that's foreign to us, to sort of represent the spiritual challenge of acquiring and possessions at all cost. And then third, we get to a passage that we tend to want to sort of unlink from the previous three, but it really is sort of talking about two different types of concerns. And so it gets out of the blocks with a very familiar, do not worry. But notice it says, therefore, because of these other three things, because we've talked about our goals and our focus and God being the one that we're working for, God noticing, therefore, we should not worry. And it's a great reminder that sort of the concern is self-worry. It's okay to be worried about other people's provision, but it's not okay to fret about our own in a sort of a faithless way. And that's really what's being said here. We can get so caught up in our acquiring, our ambitions, our goals, that these things tend to consume us, and that we get worried about whether we have enough, whether there'll be enough fame or provision or daily bread left, that we get sort of caught up in that anxiety. And so the concern is about whether we're so self-absorbed with our needs or our real desires as our ultimate concern about something else. So question 7 does a good job of getting to that. And then Jesus gives sort of 5 reasons why we shouldn't worry. Just great, succinct. In verse 25, God gave us life, so he knows what we need. He gave us this not to fail, but to succeed. Verse 26, the birds, this very simple life form, are provided for. They don't do any preparation like we are able to, and yet God provides for them. So how much more will he provide for us? Verse 27, worry is ineffective. In fact, it actually, instead of providing life, it actually detracts from life, detracts from our ability to enjoy today, and its long-term health concerns are terribly negative, impacting the longevity of our life. Number 4, not only is God concerned about what we eat and drink, but he's willing to clothe us. He's given the lilies of the field such beauty, and if he cares about those things that are so temporary, how much more does he care about us who are made in his image? It drives us back to this relationship with God, and can he be trusted? And then 5, we get to, which is sort of picked up in question 11. Worry, anxiety, that's a telltale mark of Gentiles and of heathens, of non-believers. And so there's been this, recurring motif in the Sermon on the Mount. Okay, that's what the world does, but you're mine, and so you do this differently, and that you is stressed here. And so again, we get that redirection, right? Instead, what do you do with your worry? I'll give you a place to put that energy. Instead, seek first. Don't seek material possessions. Don't seek greater things. Don't seek greater self-glory. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all those other things will be added unto you. All those other things will be taken care of. It's just a great promise. You want to know what you can be concerned about? You can be concerned about worrying about all these things, or you can be concerned about God's kingdom and his righteousness. And the byproduct is all those other things will be taken care of. Some of you that have seen the gumball jar illustration children's sermon, that's a real powerful reminder of when we put the right things first, how God makes it all fit in for us. And then last, verse 34 just kind of wraps it up with this reminder and specifically sort of tells us about the problem with tomorrow. Tomorrow's got its own problems. Don't get caught up in all that. Don't be anxious about tomorrow. Well, it's a great reminder about another challenge with worry is that so often it prevents us from living in today, and today's got its own challenges and its own struggles to be faithful through. And so when we are too occupied with the future, and particularly oftentimes we worry about a future that never is going to happen, we ramp up in about all those things and stress twice. Don't get so caught up in tomorrow that you forget to live today. Back again to that day-by-day reliance and faithfulness in living. So great stuff in here, a fantastic passage, lots of good questions. Question 11 is a good one to sort of talk about that. Then I want to actually drive you back to question number 1. Question number 1 is sort of a summation question for the entire chapter. What is most important? And I think it's great to open with that, and then again to come back and close as you sort of maybe collectively and individually want to rededicate your life in the next day to living this out properly. Once again, thanks so much for your leadership and your guidance. This has just been a fantastic study. We want to continue to just challenge you guys to help remind your group of the 6 marks of discipleship that we might live greater and greater into that. And also want to let you know that your RAVE group is able to sign up to help with Blessings in a Backpack or any other mission thing that you want. I know that some of the things that we traditionally done have been challenged, but I want to encourage you to continue to strive, not only be made difference with God's love, but to go make a difference with God's love in our community. Take care and God bless.